take to represent the law. I mean, we know a lot about Moses. He was the one who took the slaves out of Egypt, brought the Ten Commandments to the people. He represents the law. He represents the standard that God set before them. Elijah represents leadership and prophets. He represents the word that came from God to the prophets. He represents somebody who could, in other words, represent all the prophets as a great leader of the prophets. Something, and as I said a moment ago, these guys should be dead, but something that's significant about Elijah, if you haven't read your Bible, and you should take some time and go look in 2 Kings. It's absolutely amazing story, what Elijah does, is you may have heard that, in Sunday school, that story, and if you haven't, that Elijah never really died. Okay, he was walking along one day with his helper Elisha. Okay, Elisha and Elijah. Okay, I don't know how they ever got that. That must have been difficult sometimes. So they were walking along, and all of a sudden, and a chariot of fire comes and takes Elijah up to the sky, takes him to heaven to be with God. Which, again, very strange. I mean, you're walking along with your buddy, and all of a sudden, he's gone. Okay, and so he is somebody very significant to Israel, and we'll see in a little bit why, because he is one of Israel's greater prophets. So if you can imagine, again, his buddies are here, Peter, James, and John, they see this important event. This is an important event because you have two of the biggest leaders in all of Israel, and they're sitting down with a man who just 6 days ago, or 8 days ago, was proclaiming to be the Christ. So they're putting it together. Okay, the Christ maybe, and one of the great prophets of Israel, and the great lawgiver in Israel. This is a huge event. Okay, this is something important. And so, it's not that far to fathom that Peter, being who he is, decides, Master, look at verse 33. This is a good thing. He's like, hey, all right, he chose us to be here to see this, He says, it's good for us to be here. Let us put up 3 shelters. Let's put up 3 tents. Okay? One for you, one for Moses, one for Jesus. One for Moses, Elijah, and Jesus. And you got to love what Luke says in parentheses. Anytime you see these little parenthetical things in the Bible, they're just so great. But this is one of the great, almost sarcastic ones, right? He says he did not know what he was saying. Kind of like Peter was off his rocker. Okay, come on, man. These guys, you probably couldn't. They're dead. Okay, they're not even they're not there, and you're thinking about putting up shelters to them. In fact, if you look back in Mark, he also has a little parenthetical statement, whereas Matthew doesn't. In Mark's parenthetical, in verse 6, he says, he did not know what to say. They were so frightened. He's a little bit more nice, right? He's like, they're probably scared out of their mind. They got 2 dead guys there. Jesus is blazing white. This is a crazy scene. He probably just didn't know what he was saying. Whereas Luke is like, he knew what he was saying. It's Peter being Peter, okay? I mean, he just kind of says it straight. Whereas Matthew doesn't even make any mention of that. Matthew probably, hung with Peter, was trying to be a little bit nicer to him. We can suspect of this. Why would he do that? You have to wonder, here he is seeing this amazing scene. He knows Moses should be dead. He knows Elijah never died, and so definitely coming from heaven. Why would he all of a sudden think, I'm going to put up 3 shelters? I'm going to have, what's significant about this is that, again, it ties in to the history and the significance for Israel. They truly believed that when they saw an event like this, that something great was going to happen. As we were talking about before, that Israel was going to be free. I mean, if Jesus was the person he was saying to be, then this was a moment of great significance. And so it would make sense that Peter wanted to make shelters in order for this to last. If you would maybe put it in our terms, in order to continue the mountaintop experience. Because there they are, right? They're on the mountaintop. They're with Jesus. It's probably late at night, and there's this amazing event. And, sometimes we do that as humans. We have a mountaintop experience, okay? And we want to grab a hold of it and continue it. And so that's what he wants to do. He wants to have these 3 shelters and continue this experience. Specifically, the significance of Elijah. There was a bit of what they call eschatological, significance to this, which means that there was an end times significance to Elijah. Okay, in Israeli prophecy, okay, it was foretold that when Elijah would come, the Messiah And we'll look at that a little bit later because they talk a little bit more about that in Mark and Matthew than they do in Luke. The next part that happens in verse 34, the cloud appears, it envelops them, and there's a word from the cloud. And this word is significant. In verse 35, a voice came from the cloud saying, "This is my son who I have chosen, listen to him." And then all you get after that, verse 36, is that they didn't talk about it. If you look back, obviously, in the Old Testament, there's references to the cloud, right? The cloud is significant. It means that God's presence all of a sudden came into that place. God the Father, his presence came into that place. It enveloped them. It was all around them. It was something that consumed that particular part. In fact, flip with me for a moment to Matthew. I think Matthew does a little bit better job of this. Matthew chapter 17 is his accounting of the Transfiguration. If you look Matthew chapter 17, just back up with me a little bit to verse 4. Peter said to Jesus, "Lord, it's good for us to be here. If you wish, I will put up 3 shelters. One for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." While he was still speaking, a bright cloud, again a bright cloud, enveloped them. And a voice from the cloud said, "This is my son whom I love. With him I am well pleased. Listen to him." A slight difference from what we read in Luke. And when the disciples heard this, they fell face down to the ground, terrified. Luke does not have that reference. But Jesus came and touched them and said, "Get up." He said, "Do not be afraid." And when they looked up, there was nobody left but Jesus. That's not found in Luke. I like Matthew's telling of this. It's a little bit different than Luke's. I mean, if a great cloud came and surrounded them, they heard this booming voice. They heard this voice. They were instantly afraid, as anybody would be. What this voice says is immediately struck me. When I saw what it says, the immediate reference to me was, it sounds exactly like what the voice from heaven said when Jesus was being baptized. When Jesus was being baptized, there was a voice from heaven. If you recall, there's that famous scene where it says the Spirit of the Lord came down like a dove.